Thank you for joining us for another episode of Curious Careers. I'm David Huff, your host and MBA Corporate Relationship Manager. I'm really excited today to have Kate Munk, who's a Vice President at Goldman Sachs, join us and an alumna of our business school. Thanks for joining us, Kate.
Of course, my pleasure, David. Thank you so much for inviting me and looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk largely about two things today. We're going to talk about Kate's background before Goldman Sachs, and we're going to spend most of the interview actually talking about Goldman Sachs because it's an area that you, our students, are interested in talking about. So start off, Kate. Can you tell me a little bit about your background before joining Goldman Sachs?
Sure. Well, I originally come from Kazakhstan and I moved to the UK when I was about 17. Ended up doing business with law for my bachelor degree. And, it was quite late in the game. It was the last year of my studies when I tried a couple of finance modules and I was hooked from then on. So, that ultimately led to last minute change in terms of how I viewed life. So instead of going back to Kazakhstan, I decided to stay in the UK and pursue career in finance.
Excellent. And is that how you ended up at CAS?
Yes, indeed. So, as I mentioned, I was a late bloomer, so it was quite late that I figured out that finance was it for me. So that year, I frantically started researching business schools that offered master's degree in finance and loved the idea of being right in the middle of the city, which is exactly obviously what CAS offers. But I would say for me, the learning curve was steep. I'm to this day astonished that I ended up finishing with distinction because, I had to learn statistics and all sorts of other technical subjects in a very short time frame, as I'm sure you know. And I'm saying this really not to boast, but use it as a message to encourage people to pursue their passions. If you have that gut instinct, this is something that you're, super passionate about, then try. Worst case, doesn't work out, but you don't have any regrets. So that's my advice.
That's excellent because I actually studied statistics for my undergrad work, and the fact that you could pick it up for your masters is great. My dog going crazy in the background. You graduated during the 2008 financial crisis, which is a tough time to break into finance. What did you learn from that experience?
No kidding. It was tough. And again, I'm sure, David, you're well aware that most of CAS students, when they start their master's MBA degrees, they don't waste any time. They apply for jobs right away. September, October, they're already busy with interviews. In my case, and I would say I was the exception, not the rule, I desperately needed that year to learn more about finance, the industry, what it offered, and where I could see myself fit in. So I was, again, the late bloomer there, and I started applying for jobs towards the end of my master's. And I was really keen on investment banking initially. I love corporate finance to this day, super fascinating area. But then things got heated in terms of interviews, assessment centers in the fall of 2008. Can't tell you how many assessment centers I've been to, but it was surreal seeing Lehman Brothers collapse. And shortly after hearing from the companies I was in touch at the time that the assessment centers were being put on hold, it was terrifying. But I think the flip side of this is that it helped me build resilience. It made me a stronger person. And, you could sort of draw parallels in the way that financial crisis and the a tricky, very hard pandemic year we've all been through. Yes, it's tough, but we all need to stay positive and see the silver lining. Work hard. Like, I remember I had to get myself ready for those interviews. I knew FT inside out. I was relentless at submitting as many applications as I possibly could. So my message is really to stay positive and, keep applying.
That's a great message. Yeah, thank you for saying that because there is a lot of parallels now from the financial crisis to the pandemic in regards to recruitment. So Thanks a lot. I think that's a great message of being persistent and being positive where possible. What was your breakthrough that you ended up getting at Goldman Sachs?
I'm glad you asked this question, and it's great to reflect back on the whole journey. I would say I got very lucky. The lovely professor at Cass, who I believe to this day teaches mergers and acquisitions, Scott Muller, he was starting his research center at the time. He needed somebody to help with that. And I got really lucky. I got a spot. And I would say for me, it was fantastic because it eased me into this working mode, and the team was so supportive and friendly. It literally felt like a family because it was Scott and I felt and Scott's assistants. It was very small, intimate, but I'm really grateful I had this opportunity before kind of ending up at Goldman. And on the side, I kept applying for roles in finance. I ended up not right away, but I ended up with an offer from Ernst & Young. It was an accounting. And then right at the same time, I learned about this opening in the executive office at Goldman. There was really very limited information available on what the job was, but I thought, why not go speak to these people, see what it's all about? And, 11 years on, here we are.
Excellent. Wow. Let's talk a little bit about the Goldman Sachs interview process. I've heard of people having, 10 interviews more. How many interviews did you have throughout that process?
Funny that. Yes, I think I had about 10, but I know many of my colleagues had 20. It's not out of, the ordinary.
Yeah.
What I would say is that our colleagues at HCM, which is the HR function at Goldman Sachs, they're working really hard on streamlining this process as much as possible, making it as straightforward as intuitive. So things are, I think, continuing to evolve and improve.
Excellent. And well, obviously, they did a lot of interviews with you and some of your colleagues, but they got the right people in the end, which is the most important thing. Could you tell us a little bit? Your team is called International Management. Can you tell us what they actually do? What does that mean?
Sure. Well, our team sits within the executive office division. And in London, I would say it's relatively small. The functions that we have here represented are media relations. They work closely with press, Office of Corporate Engagement. They look after our philanthropic activity. Then government affairs. They, follow closely governmental, regulatory policies. Brand and content strategy team. They, look after various social media channels like Instagram, Facebook, you name it, wherever GS is represented. And they produce a ton of really excellent content. I would mention for students who are applying for GS to check out daily check-ins. They're available on gs.com. And it's really great content. It's our internal experts talking about their various respective areas of expertise, and they are short and sweet, but then you have people from research talking about markets, given a macro kind of backdrop, private equity expert talking about their industry. Really, really excellent. I would encourage folks to check out. And of course, then you have us, the international management team. And our primary function is really to support the senior leadership of the firm who are based in the region. So Europe, Middle East, and Africa, which we often refer to as EMEA.
Excellent. Thank you. A little bit about your daily role. What does your typical day look like? Is there a typical day?
Well, I'm sure that goes for most jobs. There is no such thing. But on any given day, what would the team be up to? We produce written content / talking points for the senior leaders that they then use to present to internal, external audiences. We sort of design and deliver their client engagement strategy, help execute strategic initiatives, then provide regular updates on performance, look at various performance metrics, analysis, things like that. So it should give you a flavor of what the team does, but it requires close collaboration with the other functions within the division, but also across the whole firm. And it's amazing. You get to meet so many great people across across the world and all functions.
Excellent, thank you. It clearly looks like you love working at Goldman Sachs. Today, I just noticed that Goldman Sachs is one of the top employers on LinkedIn. It's somewhere our business school students are really interested in. Are there any specific things you'd like to call out that make Goldman Sachs a great employer?
Sure. You rightly picked up. I am a big fan. Obviously, I love the firm. I've been here for a long time. And for me personally, it's 100% the culture. Um, Diversity and inclusion are really big things. And it's not something we just talk about. This is something we live and breathe. Everybody's welcome, everybody's accepted, and everyone's opinion counts. People respect each other, and ultimately, teamwork is key. I think all of that in combination inevitably leads to the firm being able to deliver excellent quality of work for our clients. And they are at the core of everything we do. And actually, as a little plug-in, I did want to mention that our senior leaders recently formulated 4 core values so that they're easy for everybody to remember. And they are client service, integrity, excellence, and partnership. And I think that sort of says it all about the culture. And this is in addition to the existing 14 business principles that John Whitehead committed to paper back in 1979. So people who are going for interviews at GS, I would encourage to kind of read through the business principles to get a real sense of how we think about the culture internally.
Excellent, thanks a lot. That's great advice and seems like a great place to work. For any of our MBA or Masters students who are currently pursuing their degrees, what advice would you give them?
Great question. Well, I'm sure they get told all the time, go to as many career fairs, meet as many people as you possibly can. Yes, I 100% echo that. And in addition, I would say consider plan B, C, D, i.e. alternative routes. I remember back in the day when I was going to various career fairs representing GS, and I was frankly astonished by how long the line was for the investment banking division or, say, global markets. But I know 100% other departments are not less exciting. Maybe they're just less understood. So I would say get out of your comfort zone and get to meet other people. You never know what might spark your interest. My I think journey is a case in point. I was super interested in corporate finance to this day. I still am. But then I ended up doing academic research, got an offer in accounting, and finally doing this job in the EO. So yes, certainly consider alternative options. And, in the current environment, I think, again, we need to work really hard on prepping ourselves for these things. And I do spend some time talking to students. I would say it's very apparent to me right away whether they are following what's happening in the market. So you want to differentiate yourself. You want to be knowledgeable. I would say do read FT Bloomberg almost on a daily basis. It's very obvious when people know what's happening in the world. So I think that.
That's fantastic advice, and I'm smiling because it's great that it seems to mirror a lot of what our career advisors tell our students as well. You have to differentiate yourself and be knowledgeable about the workplace that you're hoping to go to. So thanks a lot. That's great advice. I know you're very busy, so this is the last question. What's the best way for someone to enter into a career at Goldman Sachs, please?
Great question. I think, starting with our career site, I think it looks great and it's quite intuitive. There is a clear section for students versus professional hires. There is also a formal referral system. So if you do have friends, colleagues who work at Goldman Sachs and who are willing to support your application, please do consider that route. It is very helpful. And again, educate yourself on the firm. There is so much content available. Read through the most recent earnings. Our investor relations page also has fantastic content from the Investor Day, which was the inaugural Investor Day that the firm hosted back in 2020. And for the first time, we were able to release a ton of videos with the divisional heads talking about their respective businesses, doing proper deep dives into what the growth areas are, i.e. where we're growing, what we're most focused on, what our vision is. So do please check that out. It's really invaluable information.
That's fantastic. Thanks a lot, Kate. That wraps up our interview for today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. I think that's a great story of persistence, being willing to pivot, and really kind of lifting up the hood on what it's like to work at Goldman Sachs. And it seems fantastic. So thank you a lot for joining us.
Absolutely, my pleasure, and best of luck to all the students applying for jobs now. You'll get there. Just stay positive and stay persistent. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much, David. Great to see you.
Thank you. And for everyone watching the video, thanks a lot for joining us for this episode of Curious Careers. Make sure to check back for future episodes coming. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.